Welcome to GovCon Unscripted, where we dive into the unfiltered stories and strategies from all around the world of government contracting. Join host Chelsea Roberts as she explores how to navigate, thrive, and win in this complex but lucrative industry.
All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to GovCon Unscripted. I'm your host, Chelsea Roberts, CEO of Collaborative Compositions. And today I've got with us David Stearman, CEO and founder of Proposal Strategies and Development Consulting. David, who are you? What do you do?
I've been doing this for about 27 years, proposals in the federal government contracting space. Tell you a little bit about my company. We help small and mid-sized GovCons operating across the ecosystem succeed and thrive in what's really a rapidly changing and still highly competitive market. And we do that by providing full spectrum proposal support, which includes direct support, staff augmentation, training, coaching, mentoring, and consulting services. We really value relationships over transactions. That's how we like to interact with our clients and our consultants. We also highly value really good service to clients and radical honesty. And we provide added value to our clients by helping them build internal capacity as they grow and mature. And we like to say that our ideal client is a company that knows what it doesn't know and understands the value of proposal professionals. So that's it in a nutshell.
Interesting. How did you get started in this industry? How did you get involved in proposals to begin with?
Like a lot of people in GovCon and particularly in proposals, purely by accident. I graduated from college a lifetime ago in a galaxy far away with a degree in philosophy. And as you can imagine, going through the want ads after graduation, there weren't a lot of wanted philosophers. So I took some time to find my way, worked for higher education associations for a while, which I really enjoyed, but didn't pay well. And then I became a freelance editor for academic institutions and think tanks and organizations like that. Also very enjoyable, didn't pay well. While I was doing that, I was talking to somebody, I don't remember who it was now, and I owe them a debt of gratitude, and I wish I could remember who it was. But they suggested getting in touch with somebody who was involved in government contracting, and particularly in proposal editing. So the way I got started was through editing proposals on a freelance basis. And one of my first big assignments was with Booz Allen. This is going back in the day because this is in the last century, believe it or not. It's so strange to say that. But 1999, I start editing proposals. And I was a very good editor to begin with. I was good at that. It turns out I was quicker than most editors that they dealt with. And it was something that paid a lot more than academic editing. Just a lot. So I did that for a few years. On one of those assignments, I worked for a large GovCon on a proposal and did that for 2 weeks. And then a month later, they had another proposal. They asked me back. And then after the second proposal, they said, hey, we'd like to hire you full time. And so that's when I started working in the GovCon industry directly. I worked for that company for, 2006 through 2012, and worked my way either up the ladder or back up the pipeline, depending on how you look at it. Because I started as an editor, I became a proposal coordinator, then a proposal manager, then I was a senior proposal manager. Then I left that company and moved to another large GovCon where I became the senior director of proposals. And I worked there for about 2.5 years, and they got bought. And as often happens, many of the people who were there were no longer there, and that included me. And that's when I started my own company, Proposal Strategy and Development Consulting. That was in February 2015. And here I am 11 years later. That's as quickly as I can do it.
For sure. Now, would you say that you've fallen in love with this industry and working within doing and managing proposals over the years?
I would say I've fallen in love-hate with the industry, which I think is also pretty common.
Sure.
We know. Because, yeah, strangely enough, I really enjoy it. And I also sometimes just feel incredibly frustrated. Some of that has to do with what happens on the government side of the equation. And it has with what happens on the industry side. It's one of the reasons I'm so happy to be on this podcast, because I just love sharing what I think I know with people in ways that will help them be more successful at what they're doing.
Sure.
And not because it benefits me in any way directly, indirectly probably does, because if they're doing things in a better way, then when I'm working with them, it's a little easier, right? But mostly it's just, I like helping people. And that's really part of the ethos of my business as well. It's all about being of service. And so if I can help someone in any way, whether I get paid for it or not, is secondary to simply helping. And I do that in a lot of what might seem like tangential ways. But for example, on every client engagement, while my team and I are working with them, we're not just doing the work, we are showing them the way to do the work. So there's a lot of informal coaching and mentoring going on. We also do formal training that we do get paid for, but mostly what we're doing is the informal coaching and mentoring, just helping them get smarter and better about what they're doing. The other thing that I do a lot of is I help people with things that have nothing to do with proposals. I have a really large network in the GovCon industry, and I've been involved with GovCon networking groups specifically, where I have good, strong relationships with a lot of people who do a lot of different things relating to Gov. For example, GovCon attorneys, accountants, recruiters, marketers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of times I'm having conversations with clients along the lines of, oh, you think you need to beef up your marketing efforts? So I'm going to connect you to the marketing people that I know who are really good at that. And so I make a lot of referrals. It's just a continuous thing that I do. I'm helping that client. I'm helping that marketer potentially get a new client. And I don't get anything out of that other than the satisfaction of knowing I helped people.
Coming from somebody who likewise is very keen on helping people and collaborating with people to help them grow, learn, and mature, I find that's exceedingly rare in the industry. Somebody who just genuinely wants to see other people succeed and has really nothing to gain other than the reputational back pat of appreciate the good referral or the good reference. That's basically the cherry on top, right? It's that extra hand that goes into the service.
And the thing is, it can be a very cutthroat business. GovCon is still a difficult business, challenging in many ways. The past year has been particularly challenging, as we all know.
Right.
And yet, what we like to say about proposal work, particularly someone who owns a consulting business doing proposal work, because there are other companies that do what I do, and I'm friendly with all of them. I'm not competitors. And we exchange clients all the time. We exchange consultants all the time. We talk all the time. There's plenty of work out there. Even with all the upheaval over the past year, there's still plenty of work out there for everybody. And so there's no reason to get so cutthroat about it that I end up isolating myself, and that's counterproductive. So I feel like, let me see where I can help. So yeah, that's just how I like to move through business, but it's also how I like to move through life.
And now you've done this for quite a while now. And you mentioned a couple of times here that the last year has been particularly challenging. Is that sort of a culmination of all of your time in the industry? Was last year challenging? What sort of changes have been taking place more in the last year than what you've seen before?
Yeah, I would say it really is tied to how the current administration has approached all of this, starting with the DOGE efforts for what you want, good or bad or indifferent. But starting with that, the FAR overhaul, that's had a huge impact. And some of the reorienting of priorities, had all of those things together have created huge upheaval, really. And it's particularly impactful for the small businesses and even the mid-sized businesses. Our sweet spot as a company is the small businesses. We work with mid-size occasionally, not as much, very rarely with larges, only because they typically have a proposal department in-house. So they're not looking at consultants. But the small businesses have really struggled. And this has been true for my clients. And I've talked to my colleagues who work with other smalls, and they're finding the same thing. It's really been difficult because of those changes where the smalls don't have the real resources and the knowledge base often and the wherewithal to adapt. And it's counterintuitive and ironic that the smalls, who often the story they like to tell about themselves is we're nimble. We're not like turning in, right, like a Booz Allen or an SAIC or a Lockheed or whoever, and quickly do something different. That's hard, right? And we like to say, oh yeah, the smalls, we're nimble. That's often something we say in proposals, but it's been harder for them because so many of them were caught flat-footed. And if they had maybe prepared themselves a little bit better, that would have helped. But the truth is, some of them are also very narrow-banded. For example, I had a client for many years, veteran-owned small business, and the work they did was PMO support. That was their role. So they had a perfect storm because what was happening is they were graduating their NAICS codes. So they were being forced to move out of the set-aside world into the full and open world. They were in PMO support, which was one of the things that DOGE focused on particularly and canceled a lot of those contracts. And they really weren't prepared for it in the way they could and should have been, despite my entreaties to them to do that. But in any case, and they lost work and they're still around. They're hanging on by a thread, but they've lost a lot of their best people voluntarily and involuntarily in some cases. And I think ultimately they're not going to survive it. And the third part of the perfect storm is I'm sure they'd like to do an M&A activity and cash out. The owners would, but there's no way they can. They have no assets now. They have no past performance assets to sell. They don't have people to sell. And so they're not positioned to sell except at a value so low that it wouldn't be worth their while to do it. So that kind of perfect storm, I think, is happening with a lot of smalls who are not well positioned. Now, other smalls have been better positioned, either by virtue of the fact that they were in IT, which remains a strong area for GovCon work. There's plenty of dollars still out there for that. Or if they're smalls that have good, strong relationships with good, strong primes, that's going to help buoy them and get through this period, however long it lasts and whatever it looks like at the other end. But for now, it's just been a real struggle. And a lot of the clients that I'm still working with are feeling the pain of how are we going to pay the bills this year? And then that's still going on even more than a year later. And things are a little more settled down now. And we're seeing with some of the more recent budgetary and appropriations activity that despite what the administration was saying on day one about government contracting, it's settling back down into something more like the normal that we've experienced for the past 20 years. Not completely, but closer to that, a little more familiar. And it's really just a matter of figuring out where the dollars are going to flow and how to deal with this new environment where so much of the work is now going to be flowing exclusively through GSA, for example. And most of the smalls have been smart enough that gotten on to GSA if they weren't on already. So that's good. It's ironic because if you had asked me 5 years ago, if you were a new small business, should I rush to get onto the GSA schedule? I would say no. First, you need to understand how the GSA schedule works and how you're going to market to it and how you're going to bring work to the vehicle. Because I always tell people, one of the presentations I've made at conferences on multiple times is called proposal heresies. And one of my heresies has been the way to make money on a large vehicle like GSA or a multi-award IDIQ is not to win task orders. The way to be successful is not to win task orders. And they look at me like I have three heads. What are you talking about? What I mean is you don't succeed by winning task orders. You succeed by creating task orders. The successful contract holders are the ones that identify potential solutions and potential customers and bring them together and market those solutions to those customers and market the vehicle to those customers so that when an RFP ultimately does come out on that vehicle, that company is the best positioned one because they've shaped the opportunity and they know that they're the ones who can do it the best, et cetera, right? The old saying, if you don't know who the winner is when the RFP comes out, it's probably not you, right? I've heard that for 20 plus years. That's really going to be the name of the game, even more so now with GSA. And it is important now to get on GSA, but it is still important to understand how to work those vehicles, because that's where success is going to happen, is working the vehicle. If you're simply sitting around waiting for something to show up on eBuy and then responding to it, you could have Shakespeare or Maya Angelou writing your proposal. It won't make a difference. You're already behind the 8 ball. Somebody else already shaped that thing. Somebody else already positioned themselves for that thing. Somebody else already developed a relationship with that customer. And so your proposal, and one of my heresies is proposals don't win. A proposal is an artifact, right? It's a description of an offer, and an offer is built on strategy, and a strategy is built on relationships. And there's a whole sequence of events and puzzle pieces to put together to succeed on a proposal. But I hate when people say, oh, we won the proposal. No, you didn't win the proposal. You won the contract, right? And it's often the case that it's not the best proposal that wins. It's the best offer. It's the best solution at the best value. That's the environment we're in now, where so much activity happening within GSA, and particularly for the smalls. They really have to be smart about how they utilize that vehicle, and they really have to be proactive, not reactive. And it's just good old-fashioned business development capture work, right? This is not rocket science, not to denigrate the work, but it's not new. It's the same thing. You develop relationships, you nurture them over time, and you build strategies. You don't just take the last proposal you wrote, reword it a little bit, put the right customer's name in there, and throw it over the fence. That is not a recipe for success. The challenge for smalls in particular is that for them, they don't have the resources. They don't have a dedicated business development staff. They don't have a dedicated capture staff. That's difficult, but you figure it out. And typically you have people multi-hatted. Everybody knows this. Everybody does it. It's not ideal, but that's how you get started. But the thing is, if you don't have the philosophy in place and the methodology and the processes and the tools, then it's going to be that much harder to be successful. So a lot of what we do with our clients is, again, not necessarily about proposals directly, but how to position yourself so that when we get to developing the proposal, we've got something to work with. There's nothing more frustrating for a proposal professional and a consultant. That's also true for full-time employees who do proposals. There's nothing more frustrating than having someone hand you an RFP and say, go forth and do great things with the proposal. I'm not a magic maker. I can only do what I can do with what I'm given. And so that's part of that coaching and mentoring that we do with our clients, is to let them know, as proposal people, we know the information we want to have in the proposal, and we know the right questions to ask, and particularly the challenging questions we need to ask that client. They're questions they often don't want to hear. And we, as consultants, we're in a position where we can actually challenge them without risk. They're not going to fire us, or they can fire us at some point as a consultant, but we're not losing a job per se, we're losing a client. So we feel like we can be truth tellers. And a lot of the times, what I tell clients when they tell me, oh, we've got this opportunity we want to pursue, and I take a look at it, I'll say, you shouldn't be pursuing this. Now, I may be taking money out of my own pocket when I do that, because that's the amount of consulting dollar that I could have made. But the truth is, the better value for me to offer them is to say, don't do this. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your resources. That's where burnout comes from. And as you probably know, the proposal field in particular has a huge burnout problem. It is not because people are not self-regulating. They're doing the best they can. People can always do things to self-regulate and avoid or mitigate the burnout, mitigate the stress, right? Go take a walk, meditation, yoga, whatever works for people, right? But the truth is it's a structural systemic problem.
Right.
And it's important for the industry to focus on that. And the biggest thing is making smarter decisions about what to go after and what not to go after. Because smalls definitely don't have the resources to do what they typically do, which is chase everything that moves. And that's just the absolute wrong thing to do. So a lot of this is just helping people understand a better way to do what you're doing. And sometimes it means doing less to win more.
And I find that oftentimes folks will hire, at least they'll hire us to tell them just as much of what not to pursue as what to pursue. So there's definitely something to be said about being able to decipher between things that are either shiny objects or that there's just not the P-win for, and being able to save that time and money and energy and effort and not wasting it pursuing things that aren't in line or aren't appropriate for what you're trying to go for, sure.
Yeah. Or reference a conference presentation I've made multiple times. It's basically how the phrase no bid is often the best part of your growth strategy. And it sounds counterintuitive. People don't care. Bidding more is not necessarily winning more. It's just stretching it more thin. What I do with that presentation is I present a really simple visual schema for making bid, no bid decisions. It's a Venn diagram. All of us who thought Venn diagrams were never going to come in handy in our real lives when we learned them in middle school. Yeah, they are actually handy because it's 3 circles. One circle is, can we do it? Right? That's the basic question. And most companies stop there. Oh, we can do this. Let's go after it. Right? Sure. The second circle is, can we win it? And that entails a whole lot of understanding. Do we have a good strategy? Do we have the resources? Do we have the time? Et cetera, et cetera. Do we have the right team? And the third circle is, can we make money doing this? Right? Because if our strategy is bid low, then we're not making money on it. And why are we doing it anyway? And obviously where those 3 circles overlap is the sweet spot. And even you can work with a whole lot of really highly complicated, highly quantified gate decision tool. But I like to keep it simple, especially for small businesses that don't have the resources and et cetera. Just keep it simple. Can you do it? Can you win it? And can you make money doing it? And as long as you're being brutally honest with yourself about the answers to those questions, you're going to be doing pretty well, right? There are always gray areas. I'm not a big believer in P-win, by the way. I think it's a BS thing. It's always made up. Here's how it rolls. Peers and capture managers, particularly the large companies, are told that part of their compensation is going to be how full their pipeline, right? And they have a bunch of opportunities in their pipeline, which at the back end of the pipeline is fine. You want, right? Sure. But then there's always a metric for how opportunities stay in the pipeline. And the metric is the P-win above a certain threshold. And I was internal to GovCons long enough to see how this works. Magically, every opportunity in the pipeline was always somehow just above that threshold on P-win, because P-win is a number. It's, oh, I think we have a 75% chance of winning this. No, you don't. Nobody does. It's basic math. If you have a sole source, you have 100% P-win. If you have one other competitor, you have a 50% P-win. If you have 2 other competitors, you have a 33% P-win. It's math. Now, you might have a little bit better strategy, better pricing, better people, whatever it might be, or a better mousetrap. That obviously raises your P-win. But nobody has a 75% P-win. It's a made-up number every single time. I hate it. I advise my clients not to use it. It's only good as a retrospective, collective, aggregate thing, right? You look at how many deals did we pursue? How many did we win? Now we're looking at our win rate, but also we need to look at our capture rate, because if we won 9 out of 10 things we pursued, but each of them was worth $1 million, and the one we lost was $100 million, now our capture rate is only 9%, and that's not good, right? So there's a lot of ways of looking at those things, and I think a lot of smalls are not very sophisticated about that, and we try to help them with that and refer them to people like you when we think they need that kind of help. But the point is that if you're making smarter decisions, you're going to have better results. And those smarter decisions start with what goes into your pipeline, what stays in your pipeline, and what do you put resources toward pursuing.
Now, I think that there's some of the folks in the audience today that are going to think, okay, so I can make better decisions faster using AI, and I can turn AI into my decision engine, into my proposal engine, into my BD. I can turn it into anything I need. Now, what is your philosophy on that?
How much time do you have, Chelsea? And for me, so I'm not a big fan of AI for a lot of the use cases that have been proposed. I'm not absolutely against it. I'm not a complete Luddite. I like technology. I've been using technology my whole working career. And my working career is longer than your lifespan, I'm getting. I've been working since 1981. Yeah. I started in the days of typewriters and worked my way through to where we are now. So I'm not against technology. I think a lot of people have jumped on the AI train very enthusiastically in ways that are potentially problematic because they think it's a magic bullet, and it's not. It's a tool like anything else, right? And as long as you're using the right tool for the right job, then you're probably going to be okay. But in the olden days of carpentry, you had hammers and screwdrivers and saws. That was pretty much all you had if you were a carpenter. Now you've got electronic levels and you've got all kinds of power tools and et cetera, et cetera. But still, if you're trying to drive a nail, you need a hammer. If you're trying to screw a screw, you need a screwdriver. As long as you're using the right tool, the right application, then you're on the right track. We need to be clear about what AI can do and what it can't do and what it shouldn't do. I think those are the key questions to ask ourselves. My personal judgment is that too many people are trying to make AI this sort of magic be all end all. As you just mentioned, the wolf that you just, gave about all the different ways people are using AI. AI is not a good writer. All it can do is replicate what it found somewhere else. And it's not really a good writer. The thing about AI that people don't get, or they don't think about it so much, let me put it that way. It's not exactly I. It's artificial, but it's not exactly intelligent in the way that we would describe intelligence. How do we know if a dolphin or a chimpanzee is intelligent, right? That's a subject the scientists have been trying to work on for decades and trying to figure out how intelligent are these animals compared to humans, because of course we're the standard. But be that as it may, a lot of what AI is, and particularly the AI that people are using, if all they're using is ChatGPT, that's not intelligent at all. It's not. It's just crunching data and spitting it out in a new form. And it does that very efficiently and very quickly, but it's not necessarily effectively. And that's one of the cautions I have for people in general about AI, is that people are thinking, oh, we're going to be more efficient. We can do more proposals faster, for example. And my answer is more and faster is not the same as better, right? And again, this kind of also relates to the burnout question, because you've got proposal people who are complaining, too many proposals. I can't do this many proposals in the time allotted. And so the higher ups decide, let's just use AI and you can do twice as many proposals in half the time that you were using last week.
Yeah.
That doesn't really do anything other than add to the workload of those proposal people. Now they have to do twice as many proposals as they were doing before, and they were already burned out before. So that's not the answer. It has to be applied in a careful way and in a, dare I say, in an intelligent way, in a way that really serves your company's goals and your people, so that you're not just substituting one bad way of doing things for a different bad way of doing things. Again, I don't want to disparage what the AI tools are capable of. Some of them are really very impressive.
Right.
And that doesn't make them a magic bullet. It's still a matter of applying them in a way that makes sense, because ultimately the goal for your proposals is to win contracts that drive revenue and profit to your business. That's the goal, right? It's not to pump out X number of proposals per month. It's not to enable you to produce X amount of proposals with X number of people, either direct or consultant people. The goal is to win contracts, revenue, and profit. That's the goal.
Right.
If the tools serve those purposes, okay. But a lot of times we're just not even thinking about whether the tool is serving those purposes, or is it serving some other purpose that doesn't ultimately help your bottom line.
And I think that it goes with the old adage, garbage in, garbage out. You still have to put your thoughts into the AI for it to be able to produce anything that is usable. And if you're not putting in authentic, genuine, opinionated thoughts and prompting correctly, you're just going to get the same old AI slop that is so rampant across social media platforms.
Yeah.
Right?
So much of what we do in this business is relationship driven.
Right.
The better our relationships with our customers and potential customers, the better we're going to be.
Right.
The thing about AI is it's not relationship, it's information. And information is only one input, right? You and I are sitting here having a conversation, strengthening a relationship. We've been connected for I don't know how long on LinkedIn, but we're actually building a relationship here. And one of the things we're doing right here in this conversation is I'm reading your body language, you're reading my body language. AI can't do that. And we're making judgments about each other, and I'm making judgments about what you're interested in hearing from me. You're making judgments about whether I'm saying anything intelligent at all, right? We're making judgments. Again, that's not the forte of AI. It's a different kind of tool. And I'd never really want to substitute machine judgments for human judgments, because I just think at a societal level, that's a bad direction to go. This way danger lies, and you just need to open your favorite science fiction novel where AI is a main element of it, and you'll see almost all the time it ends badly. And we need to be careful about it. But again, I don't want to be a doomsayer. I don't want to be a negative person about it. I'm just saying, let's be cautious and careful and mindful and intentional about how we use that tool, just as we are with any other tool, right? And in the same way we make decisions about whether we're going to use one type of data repository tool versus another, or one type of word processing tool versus another, or one kind of design tool versus another, or one type of group health coverage for my employees versus another type of group health, right? We make decisions like that all the time, right? And I'd like to think that we're making smart, thoughtful decisions about all of those things. Same thing applies to AI. Don't just start pumping out stuff through the AI and thinking that's going to be the answer to all your problems. It won't be.
And I think that there's something to be said about leveraging tools to make you more successful, not tools that will ultimately take more time to find out that you're not being successful with using them. So really something to be said about appropriate implementation of some of these new tools that are available.
I have a colleague who is an avid AI advocate, and she's written some very smart things about it. One of which is that in most cases, the implementation of the tool is much more important than which tool you're using and what you're using for it and how you're using it. And in particular, implementation in terms of, are you training your people how to use this tool the most effective way? Are you integrating the tool in the most effective way? And that's where a lot of AI implementations fail, is, according to this expert, is because that hasn't been thought through. People jump in quickly, and they're always early adopters, and they're always late adopters, and then there are always cynics like me. But you have to meld all of that together in a way that works for you. And that's a little different for every company, because every company works a little different, looks a little different, operates a little differently, right? So there's no one size fits all any more than there is on anything else related to GovCon work.
Now, are there things that you find in your work that you're being able to leverage AI most effectively with? Where are the areas do you find that it's being helpful for you?
Okay, I'm going to answer this in the opposite way that you intended the question, which is to tell you I'm not feeling like it's going to affect me. So one of the early ways in which AI, machine learning, automation, whatever you want to call it, came into proposal work was in shredding RFPs and generating outlines. And companies like Visible Thread were on the forefront of that. Even before AI, the large language models came on the scene years ago, Visible Thread had automated tools that did that sort of thing. And there were others, you aren't the only one. But anyway, what I found in using that kind of tool in particular was I would find enough issues with the output, an outline for a proposal, the output of that, that I would then feel like I really need to go back through this whole thing and line by line compare that with what I see in the RFP and see whether the machine came up with the same answer that I would come up with my 27 years of experience of doing this. I like to think I know a thing or two. And that was actually more time intensive for me, the comparison, than the original task would have been if I had just ignored the machine and done it myself to begin with. And that's the other thing about AI implementation that's so important is that it's really important to quality check everything, right? We all know about the hallucinations that the models have, and hopefully that's going to improve over time, but still get really bizarre stuff that's just flat out a lie. And you can't. But even aside from that, again, there are fine, nuanced judgments that go into a lot of what we do on proposals that, in my judgment, make it harder for AI to be as effective as we would like it to be. Now, that doesn't mean it can't be effective. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's a fatal flaw. But again, it's really a matter of what am I asking it to do? If I'm asking an AI tool of some sort, for example, to help me with prepping for a gate for an opportunity, you can say, here's the template for what my gate review looks like. Here's the information we need. Go into my pipeline database tool, whatever that is, extract that information and populate the slides so that I can present to the leadership something about whether we should pursue this or not. That's kind of a typical use case. And that's a perfectly good use case, right? It can do that very effectively. It can synthesize the information that you already have into a digestible form that you can then use to make a decision. But you still need a human being to make the decision.
Sure.
But I would not necessarily use an AI tool to say, do a gate review for me. I'm not sure I would do that because I don't know that I can trust that tool to make the nuanced decision that's necessary. And sometimes there are intangible elements of that kind of decision. For example, my Venn diagram, one of the circles is can you win it? And the questions that fall under that circle are things like, do we have the right strategy? But they're also, do we have enough resources, bodies, as well as this proposal? And the AI tool might not be tied into how many people I have, how many proposals are they already working right now, and what's their capacity? Can they add one more or not? Because often the decision in that gate review is not simply a matter of saying, we can do this work and we think we can win it, and we think we can price it, but we're going to really stress our proposal staff. And so now it's not simply a decision of yes or no, it's a yes and the and is, if we're going to pursue this one, we have to stop pursuing this other one. And which other one is that going to be, right? And those are finely nuanced decisions that are often about the intangibles that the tool is simply not going to be able to make for you, right? So again, it's a much more nuanced picture than people think it is in terms of how they apply AI to what they're doing. And so the best short answer to your question of what are the things that AI can do well is it's the things where you're putting them into a position to succeed just as you would try to put your staff into a position to succeed. For example, would not take me. I'm a very smart guy, got a lot of experience in GovCon, but if you need someone to hire in the accounting department of your company, you're not going to hire me because I don't know anything about it and I'm going to fail. You're going to put me in a position to fail and I will, right? Same thing with AI. Put it in a position to succeed. And there are a lot of factors that go into figuring that out. And you need to think about those things before you even buy the tool and start implementing it. You need to ask yourself the right questions and then start figuring out what those answers are going to look like. And then how does this tool make sense or not, right? Don't start with the tool and then try to shoehorn it into your process. Start with your process and start with your goals and then see how your tool might or might not fit into all of that. So that's the short answer. It's not specific by design because it's going to look different for every company, honestly.
And now this has been fantastic. I think that you provided a whole lot of insights and guidance to folks that are getting into proposals, that are neck deep in proposals. So if folks want to get a hold of you to have a conversation about proposals or further implementation of AI or how they can work with you and how you can help them, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
Email is the best way. D Stearman, no punctuation or space, at proposal-strategy-consulting.com.
Okay, great. And we'll get that in the show notes to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to check that out and get a hold of you. Now, you're also on LinkedIn, aren't you?
I am on LinkedIn under my name, and there aren't too many David Stearmans on LinkedIn, fortunately. I'm guessing there are more Chelsea Roberts than David Stearman.
Probably.
And people do reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy with that. But typically, I will move that conversation to email pretty quickly because I hate texting.
Yeah.
And it's my least favorite way of communicating. More and more people seem to do it nowadays.
Yeah.
So I've had to do it. But the other thing is I will always take a conversation. In my judgment, there's no such thing as a bad conversation. This is one of the things I've learned as I've really gotten better at networking, that in the early days, my company was new and I was going to networking events. This was pre-pandemic, and 200 people in a room, little clusters of people, walk around the room. Most of them I haven't met before. I have no idea who they are. I try to squeeze myself into a little group conversation and figure out who's who and what's what, and then try to figure out who these people are and whether they are likely clients for me, right? And so I would often find myself in a small group where one was a banker and one was a marketing person and one was, I don't know what, but within about 30 seconds, I was realizing, okay, this banker's never going to become a client for me because banks don't do GovCon, right? So I don't need this person, and so on and so forth, right? That was stupid and wrong on my part because you never know where a conversation will lead.
Sure.
Most, like 95% of our business has come by way of referrals and connections. And you don't know where those are going to come from, and they will often surprise you. And it's a phenomenon I like to call 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon.
Mhm.
The person I'm talking to in that event or on the phone directly is not necessarily going to become the client, but I have 1,000, like 1,200 connections on LinkedIn. I assume anybody I'm talking to in this business has a similar number or larger, right? But
Right.
to make the math easier, let's say I have 1,000 and you have 1,000. So you're never going to become a client for me, and I'm never going to become a client for you, although we'll probably refer clients to each other back and forth. You'll never pay me for my services, and I'll never pay you for your services, and that's okay. But 1,000 people, and I know 1,000 people. Now, do the math. 1,000 times 1,000 is 1,000,000 connections. 1,000,000, right? Odds are, even at a low percentage, 1 or 2 or 3 of those 1,000,000 connections can become a client for you or for me, simply because you and I are talking, and the next conversation you or I have, we might think, oh, this is someone that I think should talk to Chelsea, or you'll think, this is someone I think should talk to David, right? Or it might not even be that next person. It might be you're talking to your friend, Mary, and my name comes up somehow. I just had this great conversation with David Stearman. We're talking about GovCon, and I know you're just my next door neighbor that I'm really good friends with, and our kids go to school together and yada. But it was just this really cool conversation. He was a really nice guy. I'm shining myself on here, but okay. But he's talking with Mary, and maybe Mary is talking to her spouse, and her spouse is talking to someone who is in GovCon, and somehow my name filters down through that chain to that person who is in GovCon, and that person becomes my client. That's happened more than once for me. That's why I call it 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon. And that's why I think now there's no such thing as a bad conversation, because I'm going to develop a relationship with that person, and only good can come out of that. Maybe it's 30 minutes of my time, but good things come out of that. My favorite story about this is that 2 years ago, one of the members of my GovCon networking group referred me to a small business as someone that might want to hire us for our services. We scheduled a call. It was a half-hour scheduled call. We spent the first 20 minutes talking not about business. And I never talk about business in the first conversation. I always do anything but business. It's a strategy, and here's why. We spent the first 20 minutes playing Jewish geography. When Jewish people meet each other for the first time, this is what we do, because we're a small community, and it's like everybody, all the Jewish people in the world know all the other Jewish people in the world. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, but there just aren't that many of us, right? So what we found out is we both grew up in Montgomery County, Maryland. We both are about the same age. We knew a lot of the same people in the Jewish community in Montgomery County, Maryland. We both moved to Northern Virginia when we met our wives. And so we were like living parallel lives.
Sure.
We had never met before that call, but we were living parallel lives.
Yeah.
Once we got down to talking about business, it became clear to both of us within the first 5 minutes that he wasn't going to be a good client for us. They're very micro business. The sizes of the proposals they do in dollars are not enough to support the amount of money they'd be paying us to help them. So it didn't make sense. Fine, no biggie. So then we talked for another hour after that, just shooting shit, frankly, pardon my French. And we became friends, and we're still friends. So we still talk to each other periodically. We still email each other. He's never going to be a client for me, but it's a relationship that I treasure. And what I tell people, if they're thinking, should I refer this person to David? I'm not sure it's a good referral. Forget about that. Don't worry about whether it's a good referral. I will always take a conversation. Always.
I love that. That's a fantastic and generous offer. I'm sure folks are going to take you up on that, because we're going to get all of your contact info into the show notes, so everybody will have an opportunity to reach out. And like I said earlier, this has been a fantastic conversation. I'm sure that people are going to pick up lots of bits of wisdom here and reach out, hopefully accordingly. So I really appreciate you stopping by the show today, David. And it's been a fantastic conversation for a otherwise doldrums Monday.
I appreciate the invitation. Thank you. And happy to do it anytime. And look forward to our paths crossing again. Probably not in person, because I'm in Buffalo and you're in Tennessee.
Yep.
Certainly.
Yep.
Where in Tennessee, remind me?
I am just north of Memphis.
Okay. So it's unlikely we'll cross paths in person, but we can cross paths like this. And I can talk about this endlessly, as you can probably tell. And that may or may not be a selling point, but okay. But thank you for the invitation. I've really enjoyed it. I had a great time.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening to this week's episode of GovCon Unscripted. Do your part, leave a heart, and share, subscribe, and get this out to your friends so that they can hear more on the GovCon Unscripted update side. We appreciate your time today, David, and hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks for listening to this episode of GovCon Unscripted with your host, Chelsea Roberts. Do you have a GovCon story or need guidance in government contracting? Connect with Chelsea on LinkedIn to be a guest on the show or to enhance your business strategy. Don't forget, your network is your net worth. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with your growing GovCon community.